Hello everybody, welcome to Sane Game Studios. I am Sane, I'm an amateur game developer. Today on Gamemaker Tutorials, I'm going to be looking at enemy knockback, which is something that I talked about doing on my last tutorial for player attacks. When I did that tutorial legitimately so I could do this tutorial, because I see it very heavily requested on other tutorial channels. So I figured that I would make a video covering knockback. But before I actually get into enemy knockback, just in case you didn't watch my tutorial on how to do melee attacks, I will go through what I have for my project when I start. So that way you can see what's happening and what I am doing so that you know that I'm not hiding any tricks on my sleeve with the tutorial. So for my sprites, I have a single enemy sprite, and it's just this cute little mushroom guy. And he just bobs up and down like that. I have my player attack sprites accompanied by their hitboxes. So like here's my attack down sprite. And here's the hitboxes related to it. And I use these hitboxes as my collision mask for my attacks when I run my attack animation. I have my idle sprites, which is a single frame, non-animated, just facing in each direction. And then I have my walking sprites. And then, since the last tutorial, I've added one sprite, and it is this shadow sprite. And I will be explaining what I'm going to be doing with this once we actually start to get into the tutorial. I have one script, and I called it animation end, and it returns true if I am on the final frame of my animation, and it returns false if I am not on the final frame of my animation. Very useful script. I use it a lot. I have my enemy sprite, and all it's doing is just drawing its health. Other than that, it is a direct clone of my enemy parent object. And in the draw event, I added draw self, and that is because I'm going to be drawing a shadow as well. In my end step event, I am just saying depth equals negative b box bottom, and that is just to sort the depth of where it is drawn. So that way, if the player is standing behind the enemy, the player is drawn behind the enemy. And if the player is standing in front of the enemy, the player is drawn in front of the enemy. And then finally, if my health is below or equal to 0, destroy itself. And then in the create event, I'm setting my image X scale and Y scale to 2, and that is because the sprites were very small, and instead of messing around with like viewports and cameras and stuff, I just decided to make the sprites bigger. It's just easier. I don't need to do anything fancy. This is just a tutorial project. So here in my O player, I've declared an enum for my state machine, and I've set my player state to be default, declaring my variables for getting player input, all 4 directions, plus my attack key. This is for getting whether or not I am pressing any keys, and then if I am, what direction I wish to move in depending on what key I am pressing, the direction that the player character is currently facing, my movement variables. Here I create a DS list to store enemies that I've attacked in, and then here I am setting my damage to equal 1, and again just blowing up the size of my sprite. And then in my end step event, just depth equals negative b box bottom, so I can do the same drawing order to give the game the illusion of depth. And then in my step event, here in my default state, I am getting my player input. I am figuring out whether or not I've hit the attack key, and if I have hit the attack key, I am changing my state to the attack state. Here I'm figuring out whether or not any directional keys are currently being pressed, and if they are, I am getting the direction in which the player wishes to move, so that I can apply that to my movement. And then here I am taking that direction and I'm setting my dire facing variable so that I can animate in each direction. Here I'm setting my horizontal and vertical speed, and then here I'm committing to my movement. I don't have any collisions set up. There is nothing to collide with in this game. If I am pressing a directional key, which means I am moving, I am using my dire facing variable, and I am setting my walking sprite accordingly. And if I am not pressing any key, I'm doing the same thing, but it's my idle sprite. And then in my attack state, I'm grabbing my dire facing variable and I'm setting my attack sprite and changing my mask index to be my hitboxes according to the direction in which I am facing. And then down here, I am resetting my mask index. So that way I don't carry over the hitbox mask index into the next state. Here I am creating a local list to store any entities of O enemy parent that I have attacked in this particular frame. And then down here I'm destroying that list so that it doesn't create a memory leak in my game and cause it to eventually crash. Here I'm creating a local variable and I am grabbing all of the instances that I find of O enemy parent. I'm storing them in this list that I created now and then storing the value of the amount in this variable. So then if this variable is greater than 0, which means that I have collided with O enemy parent and I do wish to attack one of them, I'm going to loop through all of the instances of O enemy parent that I have found. I'm going to use this for loop to do that, and then I'm going to grab the ID of whichever instance I am currently looking at on that list, and I am going to compare it to the list that I created in my create event. So I compare it to this list. And if this value does not exist in this list, so this returns -1, which means that the value does not exist, I'm applying damage to that enemy, and then I am adding it to this list. And then down here, if the animation is over, so I'm done swinging my sword, I am returning my state to player state default, and I am also clearing the list. That way, the next time I swing a sword, I'm able to attack this same enemy again. I just don't want to be able to attack them more than once in a single swing of the sword. And then if I run this right now, so I'm able to move around, I'm able to swing my sword, and if I go up to an enemy and attack it, I attack it and I do damage. And I can do damage to one or both. Depends on whether or not they both hit my hitbox. And then if I swing and their health hits 0, they destroy themselves. So they are dead. But I want to knock them back. I want to have them going flying in whatever direction is away from the enemy. So to take a look at how it is exactly I want that to be done, we're going to think about this in like a look at it from the side, right? So the game is top down, but we're going to look at it from the platformer perspective. So let's say this is my player. This is my little dude. And then let's say this is my enemy. And I grab my sword and I swing it into the enemy. I want the enemy to go flying backwards. But I don't actually want it to just go straight back like this. I want to give it a little bit of air time so it gets lobbed up in the air and then lands like right here. So to do that, we need to create a false like 3D environment, right? So when you look at the game, you have the x-axis here and the y-axis here, and everything takes place in this space, and it's very flat. It's very two-dimensional. So we're going to create a false third dimension that comes off of it. So, essentially, we're going to have our y-axis, and we're going to be creating a fake z-axis. so that we can create the illusion of height. So, Sane, how do we do that? How do we create a fake Z-axis? It's honestly not super difficult. So I'm going to go into my oEnemyParent event. Well, my parent object. And I'm going to be doing a couple things here. The first thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating a state machine. As I said in my state machine tutorial, I use state machines for everything. I'm going to create one called default. And I'm going to create one called Knockback. I'm going to go state equals enemy state dot default. And then down here, I'm going to be creating a couple new variables. I'm going to be creating one called yReal equals y. And the reason why I'm doing this is I'm going to be using this variable to track where it is on the true y-axis without bringing the z-axis into account. I'm going to be creating another variable called z, and we're going to be using that to create a false z-axis. I'm going to be creating a variable called jump speed. I'm going to be creating a variable called KB dire, and what that's going to stand for is knockback direction, and it's going to equal 0. And KB speed, and that's going to be how quickly I get knocked back, and I'm going to set that to 3. And actually, I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call it grav, and I'm going to set it to 0.1. And then here in the draw event of my oEnemyParent, and it's actually, let's blow this font up a little bit. Add open event, draw, where it says draw self, I'm going to go draw sprite, S shadow, frame 0, X, Y, plus 18. Oh, sorry. yReal plus 18. And this value is essentially just the B box bottom of my oEnemy sprite, because it is 9 pixels from its origin to its bottom, and I am doubling its size with code. So it's actually in game, it's 18 pixels. And I'm doing this in the oEnemyParent, but this number here for setting my shadow is only going to work for that one sprite. So normally I would actually do this step in each single enemy object. So here, like, I would just go to oEnemy, and I would go to its draw event, and I would do it there. And the reason why I've created the shadow sprite and why we are using the shadow is that when the enemy goes up and it's being lobbed in a curve, it's just going to look like it has, like, it's just going across the ground in a curving fashion, unless you have a shadow that is also traveling to create that illusion of depth. Right? So like without the shadow, it won't look like it's airborne, but with the shadow, it does. And you'll see exactly what I mean when we get into the game. So now that I have all of these variables, I'm actually going to go back into my O player. I'm going to go into my attack state. And right here, where I am grabbing the ID of what enemy I am currently attacking and applying my damage to it, I also want to be applying knockback. So I'm going to go current dot jump speed is going to equal -2. Current dot KB direction is going to equal point direction, the player XY, and then its XY. And what that's going to do is it's just going to grab the direction from the player to the enemy, and it's going to send them flying in that direction so that they just go away from the player in whatever direction makes sense for them to go away from the player. I'm going to go current dot state, and it's going to equal enemy state dot knockback. Okay. So here, where I'm attacking the enemy, I'm doing my damage, I'm setting its jump speed, I'm setting its knockback direction, and I'm changing its state to knockback. So that means that we have primed everything to do the knockback. Now we can just go to OEnemyParent and we can just program in the knockback. So to do that, I'm going to go to the step event, and I'm going to create my state machine. I'm going to go switch state case enemy state dot default y real equals y break case enemy state dot knockback break. So what I am doing here is I'm just making sure that the y real variable, unless I am manipulating it in the knockback state, it is just tracking exactly where the y position is, so then I could use it to manipulate my depth. So here in my knockback state, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go jump speed plus equals grav. And then I'm going to go z plus equals jump speed. If you are curious as to why I am doing both of these and not just applying everything directly to Z, you can go ahead and apply gravity directly to Z and then run the game, and you can tell me why I'm doing it that way. It doesn't look absolutely horrible, but it looks a lot better doing it this way. So I'm going to go y real equals length dir y. The length is going to be my KB speed, and my direction is going to be my KB direction. So I plus equals, and then x plus equals length dir x, KB speed, KB direction. And then y equals y real plus z. And then if z is greater than or equal to 0, which means that we have landed. Because if z is 0, then we are on the ground. But if it's like positive 0.1, then we are 0.1 of a pixel below the ground. So if z is greater than or equal to 0, we are just going to reset our state to equal enemy state dot default. So essentially I'm just taking my jump speed and I am applying gravity to it, and then I am adding my jump speed to z every single frame. So what happens is jump speed's going to start off being -2, and I'm going to be adding 0.1 to it every single frame. So the first frame, I'm going to be adding -2 to Z. The next frame, I'm going to be adding -1.9, and then -1.8, and then eventually it'll be positive, and I'll start moving down, and it's going to create a lobbing kind of movement. And then I'm setting my Y real, which is tracking my position where I should be on the ground. And I'm going to be using length RY to do that. And I'm going to be using my knockback speed and my knockback direction. And then this is going to be where we draw the shadow. And I'm doing the same thing to my X position, where I'm just figuring out where I'm moving throughout the world. And then finally, I'm using my Y position, and I'm using my Y real plus Z, which is my false Z axis that I have created. And then finally, if Z is greater than or equal to 0, which means we have collided back with the ground, I'm setting my enemy state back to default. And if I run this now, and I go and attack my enemy, and if you want it to behave different, you could very simply just change how far up they move, how quickly they fly across the ground. If you want them to go higher but not move as far, you would give them a a lower jump speed. So you'd be jump speed -3, but then your knockback speed would equal 2, and they would go up higher but not as far. And then same thing, if you wanted them to not quite go as high but you want them to go farther, you would just do a lower jump speed. You'd be jump speed equals -1 or -1.5, and then you would make your knockback speed higher, and that would affect how they move during knockback. So there you have it. There's my tutorial on enemy knockback. The way that this works is actually rather universal. So when I was drawing it on the Paint 3D program, and I was showing you from the platformer perspective, if you wanted to do knockback from a platformer perspective, the only real difference is that you don't need a fake Z axis. You can do this all with the X and Y axis. Other than that, the way this works is pretty much the same. For example, with a platformer, instead of using a Z variable and looking at that to figure out whether or not you have touched the ground in a theoretical sense, in a platformer you could just be if place meeting X, Y, object ground, or collision map or whatever for your tile collisions, then you could just do it that way. But the actual theory about how this is done is very much the same. For a platformer, it would just be a little bit simpler. But as you can see with my sprites, the shadow creates the sense of that fake Z axis. If I were to go to O enemy and I were to just get rid of the shadow, it doesn't look nearly as... it looks wonky. Whereas with the shadow, tracking its true position, it looks proper. You know what I mean? So yeah, look how it is with the shadow. It looks like it makes sense when the shadow's there. Whereas without the shadow, it doesn't look like it makes sense. But yeah, that is how you do enemy knockback. I'm going to thank you very much for watching. I do have to admit that I feel like this wasn't my best tutorial. I believe I said this in my last tutorial. I don't script any of these. I just kind of sit down on my computer, pull out my microphone, and do them. So if I'm ever fumbling my words or backpedaling on things that I'm doing. It is because I didn't plan this out. I'm just doing it. So, but if you have any questions about what I have done today and you're having any issues with your enemy knockbacks, please reach out to me and let me know. You can go ahead and just comment your questions or issues in the comments down below in this video, and I will absolutely take time out of my day and I will help you. If you have any tutorial requests, like there is something that you really want to learn and you're struggling finding either good or current sources for how to do it, Gamemaker is always evolving. So, you get a tutorial, it's a few years old. What exactly they do might not work. So if you do come across an issue like that, please let me know and I will create an updated tutorial for you so that you can figure this out with zero issues. Like I said in the last video, I am working on a full platformer tutorial series where I will be making a game with you start to finish, starting with like a moving square all the way up to parallax backgrounds, melee attacks, wall jumping, settings, files, like splash screens for displaying you made this at the beginning of the screen, to like a main menu where you enter the game, probably 2 or 3 levels, 2 or 3 enemies. And we're just making a game start to finish together. I'm not actually going to be releasing any videos on that until I've completed the entire series, so it's still a while out. And then next week I will be doing a tutorial on broadcast messages, which may be something you've never even heard of before, but it is probably one of the most powerful tools that you will have in Gamemaker. So I think that's all that I have for you guys today. With that, I'm just going to say thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. I hope you guys are having a good one, and peace out.